Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, where we take an in-depth look at how news in Taiwan is impacting the world. I'm Joyce Zhen. Taiwan has been grappling with a surge in sexual harassment allegations against notable public figures, so much so that some people have called it Taiwan's Me Too movement. Among those accused are politicians, legislators, and also educators. But what we keep seeing again and again is just how poor support systems are for victims of sexual violence. To talk about this, we're joined by Leticia Fang. She's an associate professor at the College of Communications at National Chengchi University in New Taipei. She's an expert in gender issues, particularly those surrounding sexual violence. Leticia, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
So I'd like to just dive right in and, understand Taiwan has really been forced into a reckoning these past couple of weeks. More than 90 people have spoken out against, saying that they've experienced sexual misconduct. Why are we seeing this happening now?
I think it has a lot to do with the history, because women mainly have suppressed this kind of experiences for quite some time. Back in 20 years ago, we did have this kind of heated discussion about experiences of sexual harassment back then. Around year 2000, the feminist movement organization Awakening have helped 4 cases of sexual harassment back then. These women have come a long way, and the journey has been documented in the film A War of Roses, directed by director Mickey Chan Junzhi. The 4 women, one is college students, and the other 3 women worked in factory, professional corporations, and hospital. They all experienced sexual harassment. In 2 cases, 2 women have filed the complaint, and they won the cases. So the film director and the NGO members, they carry the film, travel island-wide to show the film in different campuses, and it stirred a heated discussion back then. And I believe the 4 cases in the forerunners' efforts have paved the way for the enactment of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act in Taiwan. But the thing is, after that, most of the people, in terms of the public opinion, people were not that supportive for the victims. They tend to suspect the victims. So recently we had so many cases. This is really a totally breakthrough.
Right, and so you're touching on, this film, and now we're also seeing the new Netflix show Wave Makers kind of playing a similar role. Is it different this time around?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the very first case. It broke up in the political realm, and especially the case popped up in the ruling party, the Democratic DPP. So in several political officials, party members, they resigned since then. And similar cases also hit KMT and the other political parties, and it spread to the other cultural spheres, sports, media, and all the other spheres. And people came to realize there are women and men victims in all walks of lives. So I think that has a lot to do with I wouldn't say success, but the emergence of Taiwan version of Me Too movement this time. Yeah.
Definitely. And so before we go on, maybe I'd like to just get a sense of just the sheer prevalence of the issue. So let's take a look at some numbers. Workplace sexual harassment in general in Taiwan is unfortunately quite common. 2022 survey by the Labor Ministry found 140,000 women and 60,000 men experienced sexual harassment at work, but only 30,000 women and 9,500 men filed incident reports. And as to why relatively few people spoke up, the survey showed most people feared not being taken seriously and potentially becoming a target of gossip, among other concerns. On that note, what is it about Taiwan's culture or social norms that makes it particularly difficult for people who experience sexual misconduct or violence to come up?
Yeah, let me take the case in year 2018 as an example. I mean, back in year 2017, the hashtag MeToo movement erupted in the United States, and it gained momentum globally. It went to Asia countries like Korea, and also people in Taiwan has paid attention to the movement. But back then, say in news reports, we did have news reports with headlines like Taiwan Me Too movement back then. But only the cases with alleged victims with young kids, young girls as the victims aroused public attention and empathy. For all the other brave women who came up and spoke their stories of being sexually harassed, they are scrutinized and basically cyberbullied back then because people dig out their personal information and conduct some kind of cyber violence like doxing, try to collect their personal informations and challenge their credibility as the perfect victims. So that showcased how women were treated if they dare to come up and share the experience. Instead of empathize with the women, people, even journalists, try to challenge their credibility. So that's how women experienced back then. Yeah.
And so you mentioned this perfect victim, and a lot of this dialogue as to, how testimonies should come out, it's dictated by a lot of how reporting is also done about it. So if we can just take a step back, I think this would be a good moment to look at some bigger issues at play here, which you've also touched on. One major part of it is digital. Back when the Me Too movement took hold in Hollywood in the US, journalists played a really big role in investigating and also publicizing these cases. But in Taiwan, most of the victims have come forward on their own, social media platforms, writing their own testimonies directly in their personal accounts. So what does this difference in approach signal to you? And also, how does that fit to, what you deem, or what you were mentioning about the perfect victim kind of expectation?
Exactly. So a professional journalist, let's put it this way, to be professional means they have to verify the stories, check to see the source of the information. But at the same time, for those victims, men and women, they wouldn't be able to provide the sufficient enough evidence to convince journalists, to convince the general public online. So the stories went around, went viral. It's true. But at the same time, they invite a lot of criticism in terms of how you're going to verify the stories to be right or wrong. And also the professional journalists, they have little experience in reporting stories of this nature. So in the past, they are used to adopt or took whatever netizens, people online says as the news source. But when it comes to women's sexually harassed stories, they appear to be very reserved and try to verify every word she said. Up till now, for the past 2 weeks, we still saw a lot of netizens left messages under the post and saying that, why didn't you spoke up 10 years ago and now you had a voice? Or at least we should hold our judgment until the verification is done. But thing is, the professional investigation of this type of crime, sexually harassment or molest or sexually assault, you don't have witness at side. So it is extremely difficult. You have to count on professional people with a lot of experience in terms of investigation.
Social media is now a new platform for victims to come forward in their own words, but you're also saying that it invites perhaps some public discourse and commentary that could run counter to what they're trying to achieve in telling their story. So what are some unique challenges do you see now with this new tool? Because obviously it's helpful, but where do you strike that balance?
I think the thing is, most of the victims or for those of us who have experienced that type of sexual harassment, we have experienced a serious self-doubt already in the past. So what I would suggest is, if you want to share your personal experience, just spoke up and ask for professional help. And you do not have to reveal your identity. And victims should not worry about the backfires. Of course, there would be this kind of repercussions and cursing or serious suspicion about the credibility. They're always there. They were there for the past 20, 30 years. And that's why people, women and women, they silence themselves. But now we are not just count on individuals' courage, but we count on system. So for everyone, we have to reflect upon where we are, our organizations, institutions. Do we have this kind of act? Do we have this kind of procedures for people to appeal once they are sexually molested, harassed? And for the general public, you have to listen instead of jump on the victims and question their credibility at first. And for the legislator and the government, we are now at the time to try to reform the law as soon as possible. Even though I do have some reservations about having it done quick, but still, we expand the horizon and get a chance to discuss about this kind of law reform. I think it's imperative. It's very, very important.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Now, we don't have too much time left, but I do want to get your kind of final remarks. You have kind of mentioned, what you would say to victims in terms of seeking out support, but if you could just leave us with some of your final thoughts on the topic.
I would like to begin with a small story. A friend of mine shared with me that for the past 2 weeks, her male friend apologized to her through the email and saying that for the past several years, she has addressed this type of experience of sexual harassment before. But he's kind of, he didn't know how to respond. He didn't dare to ask if that's true or fake. It's just left it there. But for the past 2 weeks, her male friend suddenly realized it's just not one or two women's unique experience. It's everywhere. It's like women's everyday life experiences. So he wrote her a letter to apologize and saying that it's not too late to listen to her. I think that small story means a lot because out there, the public opinion, the climate of public opinion is different in the sense that people are ready to listen and people are listening. I think that paved the way for the follow-up action, including legislators act in reforming the law and everybody reflect upon each other's experiences and ask what I can do to amend all these mistakes. So I think for all the victims and the onlookers, there's a lot of chances for us to amend what is supposed to be there.
Definitely. It's obviously a huge topic and with different angles and different considerations. It's clearly a systemic issue. But so Leticia, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more stories from TaiwanPlus, please check out our Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.